For more great content, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell.
Hey everyone, Tyler Fee on Fire Erzberger here, and welcome to Showstopper. I am back in my swanky new headquarters out in Los Angeles, and today I am joined by someone who hasn't moved, who's still, in her setup, waiting to be shipped off to do some EMEA action. The world champion herself, in her little Gambit jersey. It is my co-host. It is Yinsu Collins. How you doing, Yinsu?
I should have worn my Ascend jersey, but it's a Gambit kind of day. I hardly recognize you, Tyler. I've never seen you, besides in real life, in such high definition before. So
I know,
this is a nice change.
I don't look like a hostage victim anymore. It's actually, it's a really big step up. No, this is like season 2 of Showstopper. Season 2, we're back. New season, gotta upgrade the quality. And bringing in our third chair today, it is our resident young person, Danny. How are you, buddy? I mean, we know 100 Thieves are coming. We got the Zoomer actions. All these teams have like 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids with anime avatars, and we're like, we gotta have Danny on as our resident young person. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's nice to be back on with you both. And I know this is the only jersey I have. I don't have a winner's jersey, but I have the next best thing, which is hopefully winners this season.
Yeah, I mean, she can wear a Sun jersey, a Gambit jersey. If it doesn't really matter. EMEA, like I've given up my bravado of NA being the best region until we can actually get our shit together. And that's why we're on the NA reaction show. And we're talking about positives, guys. We're talking about like new beginnings, new seasons. So let's start with something uplifting. Teams failing. Out of the gate, probably the biggest story coming out of the NA qualifiers isn't who made it, but who hasn't. And it has to be our first topic. TSM fails to qualify for the first season of VCT NA Challengers. It was as usual, a very exciting ride from TSM, but it ended in disaster as they got out from an old friend. TSM wearing the TSM tag, bang on Built by Gamers eliminates TSM from the qualifier. Danny, what's your prognosis? What's your instant reaction to TSM failing to make it to VCT Challengers NA?
I don't know. It's so hard because I feel like TSM has the parts, or at least most of the parts, to be successful, but they just haven't been as an organization in Valorant since First Strike, which was now almost 2 years ago. So not quite 2 years ago, but it's a long time. It's been a while.
It's a long time.
And TSM just don't look good. I almost want to say they're on the borderline of just like a roster wipe and start over. I mean, they're kind of giving me 100 Thieves vibes from when they first brought on the Team High Ground guys that were like PUBG players that kind of did okay and then just went downhill from there. You
mean my boy Dre? You mean my boy Dre who's going to Challengers, who made it on Evil Geniuses?
Exactly.
But that is something that we can kind of harp on, right? Where it's not just just because Dre didn't fit on that 100 Thieves team doesn't mean he's not a good player. Just because maybe you have to wipe the entire TSM roster doesn't mean a Sub Rosa or Wardell or anyone's a bad player, but maybe a different situation would be better for them overall in the end. What do you think, Yinsu? What do you think about TSM's collapse?
I think it's a lose-lose situation for them because I'm personally quite tired of the trend of shitting on TSM. Like, you're not cool, you're not funny, it's so old, stop, let's just stop doing this. Like, something is really dumb when you have someone as nice as Sick coming out on Twitter and being like, you're a moron, stop doing this. It's bad. So yeah, I want to get that out of the way first. I think there's a difference between like criticism and expectations and just like seeing a team fail, of a group of players fail, and then jumping on that bandwagon and then dancing on their graves when most of these people have achieved nothing in their lives anyway. Just want to get that out of the way. But I think it's a lose-lose for them because they've been a meme for a while. Like, whether in a good way or a bad way. So if they win it, like if they do qualify, people will shit on them for something that they didn't do, or they'll be like, oh, can't believe they had to qualify through the lower bracket. You know, this team nearly took that in TSM. But if they don't qualify, as you guys see, realize, this happens. The fallout is massive, and it perplexes me because I don't know why this team not qualifying, like the fallout of them not qualifying, is bigger than like any other team in the history of VCT. I feel like ever, and none of it is encouraging. None of it is like, oh, so this is, I've not seen a single person tweet like, oh, this is what they need to do. This is what I would like to see them to do. This is what they should do. It's all just like drivel and garbage and like shitting on them for no reason. Like, I just think it's blown out of proportion. I do enjoy some of the memes, you know, some of it is pretty
memes
amusing.
are fine. Memes are good.
Memes are fine, but it's just
memes are
like, maybe because of the time difference, because I went to bed like blissfully not knowing anything, and then I woke up to my Twitter and I never had to mute so many people in my life. It was atrocious.
It's like Wardell stole their girlfriend or crush or something. Like, it's actually kind of like frightening of how much hatred this team gets for being like relatively vanilla. Like, they're not like a team that like,
they're not doing anything to piss people off anymore.
Just a short amount of time.
I think back in like the Sentinels days where they used to trash talk each other back and forth, but they've not done that for ages.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing you could bring up criticize-wise is you could ask the question, I think, fully is, does the style of Wardell work? Because TSM plays a very specific style around the Wardell up. We saw it with him on Jet, and now he is playing Chamber every single map, and he's putting up amazing numbers. If you look at just statistics, he is one of the best players in both of the qualifiers, but when TSM plays, they play very rigid around that style of he's going to get the operator, he's going to not be entry, he's not going to be the entry, we need someone to entry for them. So I think if you're going to look at pinpoint one big issue, outside of just, you know, chemistry issues and just them coming together, them learning how to play their roles, I think the biggest thing for them and for TSM is that they need an entry player. Subrosa was probably their most aggressive player, but he is playing, you know, that initiating role. He's playing the Sky most of the time, where you're looking at Corey, who I have such high opinion of as not just a player, but as a person. And you're looking at Corey and saying, this has to be our entry. And it just wasn't working on the qualifiers, where it looked like he was a bit, he looked a bit, not shaken, but a bit timid in his play. And I think that's a lot to do with just communication, getting to know one another. They were looking great in scrims. It just didn't translate to the actual stage of the qualifier. But do you think these five players should play for the summer qualifier, Danny? If let's say you're the GM of the team, which now has full control, would you just run it back, or would you say, we're going to just blow it up? We're going to go look for the best prospects in all these tier 2 teams. Who would you build around on this team? Do you keep all five? And if not, who do you build around?
I think it's kind of hard to say blow it up when you don't know. I mean, because I could say blow it up all I want, but I wouldn't have like 5 set players to replace everyone with, if that makes sense. But I think it's the case of, like you were talking about, of your boy Dre is a great example of just not usually the right team or the right teammates around him or the right role. I mean, he was basically stuck on Sage duty when he played for 100 Thieves, and then he left, and then he played basically the Raze smoke for Luminosity and did so much better. And you talk about Wardell changing up his sort of positions, but it's like, if you're going to rebuild around someone, I would say build around Wardell and find a role that he wants to play for the meta going forward, and then build a team around him, because it kind of felt like TSM like tried puzzle piecing in different places and then also role swapping, and I don't know if it's the right mix right now.
We did see that the VP of esports of TSM, Dominic Callis, who came over from Gen.G, announced after the qualifier, after all the backlash, that they're instituting a plan for the summer qualifier to make sure, because if they fail the summer qualifier, their year is done. They're not going to Masters 2. They're not going to Champions. 2022 is a bust. So to combat that and to qualify for the upcoming season in 3 to 4 months, it's a long time. They are which I think we can all agree with, they're going to compete in almost every third-party tournament. They're going to compete in
they should.
Finally,
which they definitely should. Yeah, they should. That's 100%. I think if there's one criticism of the team you can just point at and say, why the hell weren't you doing this to begin with, is grind those third-party tournaments. We've seen teams like EG do this LG do this, and who's in the challengers event? Who's going to the main event? It's those teams who are grinding versus a crew, and all these really good tier 2 teams that we kind of found out during this qualifiers that the gap between tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 is not as huge as you might want to believe. Maybe if you're a Cloud9 Blue, maybe if you're a Sentinels, maybe if you're an Envy, yes, you do have that, kind of bump over these tier 2 teams where you can kind of breeze by most of them. But if you're a team that's just on the fringe of tier 1, you're not going to have an easy time versus the crew. They're very good. Cosmic Divide. All these teams are getting better and better and better. So, yes, I think having them play in these third-party tournaments, grinding them is going to be a big thing. Secondly, outside of giving the GM full control to find the full roster, they're going to be moving to Texas full-time. They're going to actually be in a team house environment, team house, gaming house, apartment system if they do it. But they will all be together grinding towards the summer qualifier. So you have to say that's pretty uplifting. It's as optimistic as you can kind of be after such a failure of not qualifying into.
I'm actually a little bit sad we never got to see them play on LAN. Like, speaking of the environment of boot camp.
They've never played on LAN. That's crazy. It's been 2 years.
I would have loved to see how different, because there is a big difference, and I would have loved to see if that would have made a difference. But this kind of, I think we've had this conversation before where, circling back to like what Wardell needs to do and how they need to rebuild around him, that's the Uzi. Like, that's the Uzi of your team. You need a Ming, you need a Xiaohu, you need like an MLXG. But the fact is, you, like you said, you need that entry flag, but you also need everybody to be on the same page of recognizing that that's your Uzi. You protect him at all cost. You facilitate him at all cost. You need someone to kind of bait for him, and then you hope for the best. And as you see,
you've seen Ascend do this and win.
In the beginning, in the beginning, Ascend did do that a lot, I feel like. I think they've evolved over time.
Yeah, they evolved, but they still can go back to that style. They can still play that style
exactly.
really well.
It's just the fact that I just feel like it is the Uzi kind of syndrome where everybody needs to put aside like any other, I don't want to say egos because I don't know them, but everybody needs to be on the same page of like, what is the win condition? And I feel like my problem is sometimes I don't even know if they know 100% what their win condition is, because they're not really leaning into it if they do know. So whatever happens with the roster, whether they stay together, they don't stay together, the rebuild, whatever, I just want to see at least that, like having some kind of identity where everybody is just backing this thing. To an extent, I feel like Sentinels at points did that with tens. Like even Shaz stepped away of what he was doing because he was like, that's Tenz's job. Like, I need to make sure that he does his job. So yeah, I want to see that from them. It is kind of sad, like I said, that we never saw them play on LAN, but it's really, really tough now for North America. I feel for you guys, because over here we've got like VRLs, like we're shitting competitions out of our asses.
We got NSG,
we got promotion, we've got relegation. Like, so I feel for your teams, because I think partially why teams probably underperformed is not getting used to the pressure of like, this is your only chance of playing VCT for 4 months. Like, that's insane. Like, I feel like even the best players in the world might let that pressure get to them a little bit. Whereas over here, I know in EMEA, like, not getting VCT, that sucks ass. But in 3 months' time, you have a promotion. Like, you can get promoted. That the path, there's a path. So I think that adds another layer to why everybody is kind of shitting on teams.
VLRE Spain, right, where it's like, like all these big orgs are playing in this like league, which is not, it's not the major league, but it's still going to get hype of Koi in there.
Oh, it's going to get loads of viewerships.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so it's not going to feel it's not going to feel like you're playing in front of 200 people watching an NSG qualifier weekend. No offense to NSG, they are the lifeblood of North American Valorant. They do an amazing job, but it's not the same as being a real league with like real teams that are a secondary league. It just kind of feels like a gigantic drop off from VCT and NA.
I don't know if I'm leaking anything, because I'm pretty sure I read this somewhere, but I might be leaking something. So apologies if I'm leaking. But I definitely read this somewhere that apparently the VRLs is going to function like EU Masters in LEC, where at the end of the VRL season, there's going to be a tournament just for those teams. Like a big tournament, which is insane. Like, they have their individual regional leagues, but then at the end, you'll see like Giants play against like Yonk and Wave and all this stuff. They're going to come together. I guess, for the ones that don't get promoted. So like the infrastructure is insane. And when you have that infrastructure, the pressure of qualifying is kind of not as heavy, and you have something to play for. You have something to prepare for. Like, I would love to know the mentality of these players in NA now, or how they feel now. It's like, oh, we did all that work for quite literally nothing. Like nothing. It's not in EU. It's like, oh, we did all that work, and now we get to play in the like tier 2, and it's fine. You know.
You're also thinking about the org spending, right? Where NA is spending
your salaries are fucking insane.
We're not going to talk about salaries.
We're not talking about like, you know, tier 3 teams that are paying, you know, a few $100s per month. We're talking about these legitimate, you know, super companies in esports who are paying really well for these teams who are now kind of lame ducks for 3 to 4 months, where if you are a TSM, you have to pull all your resources and be like, we're sending you to Texas, we're going to be grinding these tournaments, we have to make it for the second season, or your year's done with 6 months to go. So going from one team that failed to another team that failed, there's kind of a, you know, a connection between these two teams. Yeah. There's a theme. T1, who lost against TSM through Twitter, also failed to qualify for the VCT Challengers through different means than TSM. Qualifier 1, they looked like they were going to make it. It looked like, wow, T1 is changed. We have Steel.
Steel's back.
Old man Steel with 4 young, you know, cracked out players who's, you know, Pony, Seven, all these like really great young talents. They're running through the bracket. They get to play TSM. They're playing TSM. They're only a few games away, a few close matches away from qualifying. They smashed TSM in game 1. They're smashing TSM in game 2. And then Twitter goes ablaze. We hear
sewers,
communications, cheating. And then an hour or two later, it's announced that because of the coach being the T1 coach communicating in the game, which is illegal in the VCT rules because of the illegal communication. The team was disqualified from qualifier 1. T1 would then shortly come after that and announce that their coach would be barred for qualifier 2. And then to make matters worse, they bombed out of qualifier 2, even worse than qualifier 1. Yinsu, I'll let you have this one. What's your thoughts on T1?
First of all, fair play to Cosmic Divide. Like, fair play, you know, all props to them. Okay, I feel like I want to separate the crime committer from like the rest, basically, because there's a big debate on Twitter whether like the players should also be punished, or if the players are also kind of in cahoots or responsible for it. I think obviously rules are rules. They're there for a reason. This particular rule, however, has been abused over and over again by multiple coaches. The only ones we know about are the ones that have been caught. I would love to know the number of the coaches that haven't been caught that keeps doing this. It's just unfortunate that this team is just always, the drama overshadows like the actual team, just like constantly, like signing of their coach before, and I do feel for someone like Steel.
Brax out.
Yeah, I feel so sorry for Steel, because like he's not there to mess around. I'm pretty sure he doesn't give a fuck about the drama either. But when people constantly only look to your team as the team that has all this drama, and they don't actually care about you competing, is a little bit difficult. I think it will be really, really unfair to expect them to just be like the greatest team in NA like that. I would be confused as to why anybody would expect them to be like that. They need to adjust like big time. I don't actually know how much time they've had to practice together. I suspect nowhere near as long as some of the rosters that have stayed together, been playing together for ages. So it is a little bit unfortunate. I think if this whole coach situation never happened, I would have loved to see like what would have happened with this team if that wasn't like an issue. That kind of plagued them a little bit. I'm only disappointed in a sense that cheating is just kind of silly in this game. Like, I think Riot on the whole are pretty good when it comes to catching like people that break rules. So I do think the reward is so minimal, in my opinion, compared to like the consequences. I hope everyone else can learn from it, but for the love of God, T1, just like stay out of drama for a bit. Let's just not get into any of that.
It's so disappointing because it's like I really like Steel. Like for all the bravado,
God, yeah, I love
and
Steel. Love Steel.
All the bravado around him is like there are so many like murmurs and talking points of like, you know, there's these like, you know, these legendary CSGO players, or not even legendary, but veteran CSGO players who came over, who don't really like the game, who don't really practice the game, who really don't care about the optics or the longevity of the game, or care about building up new players, or really, you know, helping prospects grow. And, you know, they're just here for the paycheck and just, you know, which is nothing wrong. It's nothing wrong to just do a job because you're going to get paid well for it and you're good at your job. But Steel is someone who wants to develop these players. He's someone who T1 have the resources if they want to. They could have went out and got a player like a Dre, or a more established carry player, or more established players than the ones they picked up. But they picked up Pony and Seven, these young kids, because that's what Steel does. Steel is someone who, in CSGO, he brought up the Vandys and the Zeppas and the Leafs on Chaos. And he was the one who kind of led them to become pro players. And he wanted to do that again with T1. And I think they can, and he will. But it just, this whole coaching drama just kind of, it really sullies what was a pretty awesome first qualifier for T1, where they looked like a team that could really be in the main event, who really could be a dark horse to make it to the first Masters. Then the Help Sewer thing happens. The coach gets, suspended, the whole drama. Obviously, I'm sure the backlash got to them, and then they bomb out a qualifier too, and now they're left in the situation where they have a coach that no one trusts. Anytime anything ever happens again, there's no shred of doubt. There will be no leeway from here, right? Where we look at some other teams, and if something kind of sketchy happens, we're going to be like, okay, we trust them. Like if anything ever happens to Cloud9 Blue, we're like, okay, Cloud9 Blue is not going to, like, they're a trustworthy team, trustworthy players, trustworthy coach. But if anything ever happens to T1, even the slightest bit of bullshit, they're going to get flamed. They're going to get roasted.
What I will say is that I would be really disappointed if this isn't a long-term project, because everything when it came to the signing around it, when it came to the intent of bringing in Steel and, like you said, the younger players, screams to me as we don't really care too much if we don't do super well right now, but this is a long-term project. So if in like a week, 2 weeks time, they abandon that idea completely, I will be very, very angry. Like that's when I think I would be less sympathetic towards them, because you got to give them time. And like Steel is a great in-game leader and very, very like smart and everything, but he needs time too, and the younger players also need time. So I don't want to see the org turn their backs on any of these players like anytime soon, because otherwise what was the point of putting together a clearly like long-term project in the first place? So I'm gonna reserve like opinions for now and see what happens at the end of this year. I think that's when I can really assess properly if they had done their job, if they're successful or not.
Yeah, I mean, right before we move on, like Pony, who I actually was watching during his amateur days, I was a big fan of his. He was one of the Jet players. I was like, okay, this is one of the next good Jets in NA. Like once he gets onto a tier 1, tier 2 team, he's gonna, pop off. He signed up T1, and now he's playing Astra. He's playing the controller role, right? Where you're taking this young, cracked out Zoomer who is known for his Jet play and making him a controller. It's gonna take time. T1, unlike TSM, where I think TSM was like, we're building a roster to win today. We have core, we have these experienced players. Alex now has, some experience under his belt. T1 felt much more of like a summer project where like, let's go to qualifier 1, let's do our best, and let's move on and try to hope to qualify for qualifier for the main event 2, and see if we can make it to Masters 2. But we'll see. T1, as always, TSM and T1 are always going to be in the news. We're going to bring, even though they're not playing anything really important for the next 5 months, I'm sure we'll bring them up again. Let's move on to topic 3. Biggest positive surprise and biggest disappointment. Let's just go around the room really quickly and say, who was your most positive? We've talked a lot of negative on this show so far. So for you, Danny, biggest positive surprise from the qualifier?
I think it's got to be EG. I feel like ever since they brought on the
love EG.
I don't even know. They brought on the mix, the co-ed roster, back in 2021, and they kind of got flack for it. They didn't do well. They're like, oh, yeah, that's why you don't have women on your team and all this shit, but they've come back from that. Potter's the head coach. And I'm glad they qualified. They've got a solid roster. And I think that roster has a much higher ceiling than even some of the other rosters right now.
Mhm.
I would even say maybe even higher than like a T1 if they fix their issues, maybe. But, right now EG look better, and I'm glad that they came out of it. And so I'm excited to see what EG does. I think it's their redemption arc.
I fully back that. I think for so long, like the brand of EG didn't really make any sort of stir in Valorant. I feel like they didn't really go to any big events. They were kind of, it wasn't even like they weren't doing well. It was that people never expected anything from them. So they kind of were just left kind of fending for themselves. People weren't really hating on them or anything. They just weren't considered or well respected. This time around, however, I think it's completely the other way around. I'm very, very proud to see them do this well. I think the brand of EG is the brand of EG does so well in some of the other esports, and it has history, it has legacy. I would like to see that happening in Valorant as well, and also the group of players, of course, Potter, the Queen. And I want to really quickly shout out BBG because I'm the biggest Bior Lulu simp on the planet Earth. Everything I've learned ever from any Killjoy setups, how to play Killjoy, I've stolen quite literally frame by frame from Bior Lulu. I'm a little bit glad they didn't qualify, so now he has more time to make content, so I can benefit from that. But yeah, I gotta shout them out because and that team is so likable. How could you not like them?
Yeah,
like they're one of the most
awesome.
There's got to be one of the most likable teams from NA. I've never seen anyone really shit on them. I don't think they deserve it. Poach, he did great too. I'm a big fan of Poach.
Poach is awesome. Yeah, it's a very likable team.
It's such a likable team. Yeah. You
almost qualified. They barely missed versus Rise.
So close.
Rise, the fourth place team from last year. They barely lost. Very easily, if BBG gets a different route to if they got a different kind of bracket, they probably are in the top 12. But it's just the luck gets you. And then.
It's unlucky. It's unlucky because Rise have to qualify because that's the script. You can't imagine the lack of entertainment value in NA VCT if you didn't have Rise in there.
Yeah, no shame.
You have to lose. Exactly. You have to lose to them, which is a bit of a shame. But
they'll be back. BBG's a team that you're going to watch out for the summer qualifier.
I know everybody loves them, or I love them, but I think they're slept on. I think the individuals don't get talked about enough ever. I've never seen analysts sort of come out and hype them up. But yeah, Bior Lulu, OG, put him in the game, honestly. Give him a spray or something. He is the Killjoy player for me. I love him. Anyway, yeah. Positivity.
Positivity. I'll rant out saying both of those teams, EG and BBG, both are positive surprises. I love my boy Boostio from the inaugural ESPN Invitational closed beta tournament when he was playing on Team Overwatch. 2 years and a half ago, he was a late-minute sub who came in because Seagull couldn't play, and no one knew who Boostio was, and he just destroyed everyone. We're like, this Boostio kid might actually have a future in Valorant. And now, 2 years later, he's in the main event as a star Jet player. So I've always rated Boostio, always rated my man. Dre was also in that tournament, so Dre and Boostio, the ESPN Invitational duo. but for me, EG and BBG, good stories, but I think going into the main event, a team that I think really established themselves not just as a player, but as a contender is version 1. Version 1 after Vanity left, everyone kind of just buried them. They kind of just put the dirt on the grave and said, peace out, you're all going to die, there's nothing here. He was the lifeblood of your team. And they're going to fall apart. And they did fall apart really badly to the end of the season where they're kind of just cannon fodder in the last chance qualifier. But They went out in the offseason and said, we are going to make a point to get this kid Xander, this IGL prodigy in a wasteland of Zoomer, cracked out Jet players. We're going to find one of the only young IGLs in the scene who has a lot of potential. And they spent good money on the transfer buyout to get him, brought him over, put a lot of faith in this kid to lead this team. And V1 look like a different beast now. They look like the team that was at Masters 1, who were a real top 4, top 5 contender in NA. And Xander was their best player during the qualifier. The kid is amazing, not only as an IGL, but as a fragger as well. He was leading. He was top 5 in ACS and KD as primarily playing Astra. And he's such a young kid with this IG role. It's just so impressive to be so young and have the confidence not only to lead these veteran players like Zelsis and all these experienced players who've been to lane not just for CS:GO but for Valorant as well during Masters 1, and really take control of the team and transform them so quickly. So for me, version 1 not only qualifying, but they now look like a team where going to the main event, they look like an actual contender where they can play, the Sentinels and Envies and the, 100 Thieves of the world. And I'm not scared for V1 anymore. I feel like they do have the talent and now maybe even the IGL to battle Cloud9 Blue. I would love to see C9 Blue with Vandy versus V1 with Xander in the upcoming playoffs for challengers for NA. So V1's
that's why V1 qualified, because it's the vanity script.
Oh,
like you have to qualify.
You got to do it.
Yeah, they had.
Yeah, they're definitely making the playoffs. Like 100%. The script says that Xander must play Vandy. It has to be the old team versus the new team. V1 versus C9 Blue has to happen. So we're done with positivity though. Like positivity, we gave some kudos. No, now let's go to biggest disappointment, Danny. Who not need to, because we've already talked through TSM and T1 ad nauseum. Who was your biggest disappointment from the qualifier?
Well, it's got to be the Smeek man himself and his team.
You can't say that. I forbid you.
I'm sorry.
He's incapable of disappointing people. Look at his face, man.
I forgot
himself.
FaZe. I forgot FaZe existed. That's sad. I forgot.
Exactly. The whole T1 TSM debacle swept under the rug that FaZe and Gen.G also did not qualify. They just were like, "Oh, we're just gonna not qualify, but you guys got this."
It's all good. Yeah,
but and they both didn't do well. I mean, FaZe, brought in some great talent, including Dicey, who was the reason why 100 Thieves made it to First Strike and won in the first place, and then just went, oh well. So it sucks to see, but I think like T1, it's one of those rosters that needs more time to gel because they were like one of the last teams to announce their team. Like I think it was like a few days before the event. So they need more time. But yeah, it was kind of like FaZe is this huge organization and then poof, they just didn't qualify. And I feel like no one's talking about it because T1 and TSM were the highlight disappointments of the event.
Yeah. Disappointing. I mean, FaZe. I kind of just forgot about FaZe, so I'm not going to have them as my answer. I still think, as you said, they are a summer team. They are a team, I think, that went to the qualifier saying we're going to try our best. And I don't think Baby is someone who also, even he's a very boisterous person, but I think he knows that this team needs to grind in third-party tournaments, in these Mickey Mouse tournaments as they're called on Twitter. And I think we're going to see FaZe in a lot of those tournaments coming forward. So I think it's a long-term project. So I don't want to give them the biggest disappointment. I think the biggest disappointment for me, as you slightly mentioned, was Gen.G. Because Gen.G is not a team that's built for the future. It's a team built for now. They imported a European player in Rhyme to get this team over the hump.
Hey, he was good. He had a good tournament. He was not the problem.
But overall, this team is built on experience and big-name players. And it's not only that they failed, it's that there's no interest around them. Like, when we made these show notes, we were never going to start with Gen.G. I mean, you can talk shit all you want about TSM, but win or lose, we're going to talk about TSM. People care about Sub Rosa. People care about Wardell. People care about the TSM brand. People care about T1's drama. Gen.G is up there in drama in terms of being, having these resources dumped into them with no results, but there's just no interest around them. There's not a lot of hype around them, and it's sad because I love a lot of the players on the team. Gamond is a player that I have such a respect for, not only as a player but as a person. I want him to succeed so bad. Like last year, I thought like he's up there in terms of controller players. He's a top 5 controller player in NA. Just one of his worst tournaments in one of the biggest moments. So for me, Gen.G was my biggest disappointment.
My biggest disappointment is the sheer lack of creativity when it came to the open qualifier team names. Here in EMEA, we enjoyed only Finns. You know, we had which is a full Finnish team. We had some pretty
that's great.
funny names and some pretty wholesome names throughout our like mixed teams and stuff. I saw some atrocious names from North America. Yeah, just like cringe and embarrassing and not funny names. So yeah, that was my biggest letdown. I felt like because like in Game Changer scene, you have like you have MILF, which I think is a hilarious name. Man, I love frogs.
They're the best.
Exactly, and that for me is just set the bar of like the names that people should strive for in these open qualifiers tournament. So yeah, I would have liked to see more creativity.
Yeah. Our amateur team names do suck. Yeah, there's a lot of bad ones. There's a lot because I think in Europe the thing is like there's a lot of like regional pride, so you can do like the Finnish jokes and like that's a Lithuanian team, definitely. True. In NA, everyone's spread out, so like their jokes usually are like really bad anime jokes or bad memes. And I do agree, like that's the big disappointment. We really do need to up our like amateur team name. Like guys, you're not gonna actually make it. Like you're gonna get waxed by XSET in round 1. But hey, if your name was good, we would have brought you up on the show. We would have given you some shine. But because your name was so,
I will say that like we joke about it, but it does help. Like if you have a catchy like name, or if you have a name that people are gonna find funny or is clever, it helps. It really helps, especially if you don't get through to like the big playoff close qualifier stage. So yeah, it's marketing, isn't it?
All right, we've talked about the qualifier in depth. We've talked about the failures of T1 and TSM. We've given props to EG-V1 and ranted and raved about how poor our team names are for amateur teams. But let's just do quick predictions before we let everyone go for the week. Yinsu, I'm going to start with you. Name one player you're looking at in the main event. Who's the one player that you're really looking at? It doesn't have to be the best player, but which one player you're going to be following during the group stages for the main event in NA?
100% Adam EC1S. I heard he's an up and coming, kind of newer player to the scene.
Oh, is he from California?
No, he's from a really tropical, exotic place called Burnley.
Yeah. Burnley. It's Alabama.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but it's very exotic, and they've recently they didn't have internet for decades. It's like a very new thing for them. So. EC1S, I heard, he's a bit up and coming. People don't really know what you can do. But if you're bossing around Hiko, like on a day-to-day, if that's what you're doing, I think he's definitely a player to watch. Absolutely thrilled that, he's probably the most recognized and well paid, for sure, deserved IGL from Burnley. Probably the only IGL from Burnley. But all jokes aside, I think it'd be very interesting because he has so much experience, top tier 1 experience from the best region in the world. So it'll be interesting to see if that translates over and if that actually influences his team enough for them to kind of play a different style of Valorant, or for them to kind of step up their game even more. Because I feel like 100 Thieves is that team that was just on the cusp. They were like barely anything separated them from like a trophy. Let's be honest. They were close internationally. So maybe this was the missing puzzle piece. We'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing every single person in North America butcher his name over the next year and see how much that tilts him. But yeah, I'm going to perpetuate the fact that the correct pronunciation is EC1S.
I'm just going to call him by his last name.
There's so many people call him that. It's so funny. But yeah, that's my player to watch.
Danny, who's your player to pop off in main event?
Mine is, I'm also waiting for his redemption arc. I think it's Sayaplayer. Is that how you say his name?
Oh yeah.
Sayaplayer? Yeah, Sayaplayer.
The guy
I
that
don't know
was
why he
Spider.
Why did he change his name? Why did he change
I
his
don't
name
know.
back?
Because he was on T1, Yinsu, and things didn't go very well.
Oh, you had rebrand. You got a rebrand.
It's like when you leave your old high school to get away from the bullies. You're like, I'm changing my school. I'm changing my name. Get it away. No one's going to remember that time.
Oh, my God.
It's a new start.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the Guard is a team in general that I'm looking to perform really well. But him specifically, I think it's his time to, step away from how he played on T1 and show, hey, I'm still really good. It was just my team that we didn't really work out together. So, I mean, he's nasty. So he's going to be my player to watch.
Good choice.
Good choice. For myself, I'm looking at XSET as a team. Like, I'm very bullish on XSET.
I love them.
Their crack duo, their Zoomer duo of Cryocells and Zekin, that might just be the best duo in NA. Like, right out of the gate. Like, Cryo is so damn good. Him and Xander were the two big young prospects in the transfer pool for NA. Lots of teams looking at them. Lots of teams wanting them from SOAR. And then XSET got one and V1 got one. And those were the two teams that dominated through the opening qualifier for VCT. Both of those young choices working out marvelously so far. And I really believe that Zekin is a player who showed a lot, very young kid. He was going to, the XSET house in Texas when his mom let him off of school. Like, there's such a young kid, but he's matured so much in such a little time where I really do believe like this could be the year where, we have Cryo and we have Zekin, and these are the two, boosted out Zoomers with Def leading them in the back. Another UK boy for Yinsu to cheer on. And there's just such a well-made roster. Like, I really look at that team and I say there's no real holes here. BCJ, the big man, is in, playing the Sova, like all around. Aaron on the Sentinel role, like, such a great team that was so close to qualifying last year. They added who could be like a tens-like piece in Cryo, and they have Zekin who's just getting better and better and better as he ages. And now he has a teammate that he can relate with, someone who's near his age, someone that he can really like work with, and just kind of XSET now have a core they can build around for years to come, which is very exciting. And Def might be 40 and still be IGLing this team if Cryo. And
he's not that old.
No, I'm taking like 10 years. Like, I'm giving him time.
Oh, okay. I was going to be like, he's not that old.
But my point was that he could be IGLing for 10 more years. Not that he's 40 now. He's
okay.
He's still, he's my age now. But in 10 years, he might, Zekin and Cryo might, lead into, multiple championships. So for me, XSET's the team I'm really looking out for. Cryo in particular, what a marvelous team. And let's end this very quickly. Yinsu, in a few months' time, when you're hopefully hosting Masters 1 in undisclosed location, we don't know yet, who from NA, the two NA teams, who's going to be playing for the international trophy?
I'm going to keep this short and say that I think some of the teams that haven't played officials since champions might be in a disadvantage. Having said that, I don't think that's going to affect Cloud9 Blue so much as a team. I think Cloud9 will be there, and I think XSET will be there. I hope XSET will be there, and I wish XSET will be there, and I will publicly back them all the way. Should have brought my bowl over. I've been using my cereal bowl every single morning. But yeah, XSET and Cloud9 Blue.
Wow.
Danny?
Mm-hmm.
I got to. I want to see 100 Thieves back on land.
Young person Danny is rolling in with his
surprise.
They did so well. They did so well at Berlin, and then the whole Steel situation happened, and then with Boy, they just didn't show up at LCQ with all the issues that also happened at LCQ. I want to see them back on land, especially with this new roster. But I think who will join them? I think version 1 will join them there. I think they're just going to take their Zoomer mentality and their dominant performance throughout the open qualifier and just boost their way into Masters.
All right. So this is pretty difficult. I think for one, I think I have to go Cloud9 Blue. I stated last year, I said this, when they got eliminated in the quarterfinals by Team Liquid, I said, this team, if they stay together, is going to win an international trophy in 2022. I totally believe that. I think they just needed time. I think they didn't play their best versus Team Liquid in that series. I think this team has all the makings of being a championship team, not only domestically but internationally. I think they're a team that even EMEA teams, if they go to Masters, will be not afraid of, but they're going to respect them. They're going to be one of the. I think they will respect motherfucker.
Okay, yeah. I agree.
They're going to respect my boy Vandy. But yeah,
I agree. But they did play against 2 EMEA teams and lost both times.
Technicalities.
No. Hey, even I said C9 Blue. I think C9 Blue will go. They were going to do amazingly NA. They're definitely going to qualify, in my opinion, with little trouble. But when they come up against the EMEA, that's like every single team when it comes up against us, it falls apart. So it is what
C9
it is.
Blue. And for my second choice, I was going to say XSET, but I'm not going to, cop off of Yinsu's, pick. I'm not just going to be boring and just pick the same thing she's picking. So I'm going to – I don't think we've said Envy this entire episode. I think we've said every single team in NA except Envy. El Diablo, FNS, one of the best Sovas in the world in Crashies. They're back without COVID, hopefully. So Envy, I think, is going to have a lot to prove. I think they are one of the teams that obviously are under the radar, but just because no one's really talking about them because they had such a lackluster finish to the year when they were expected to be a top 4 team at Champions. But now I think they have a lot to prove. They kind of failed because of Victor had COVID, and they really didn't get to play on stage, and they didn't get to play together. They had to play separated at Champions. I think they're going to have a lot to prove and say we're going to make this first Masters a second impression. We're going to redeem ourselves from a wayward champion. So I'll say Cloud9 Blue and Envy. Not as exciting as either of you two, but I think Envy deserves to get some props. So. And no one picked Sentinels, so we're sorry, Sentinels.
Sentinels.
Wait, I just forgot about Sentinels. Oh no,
it's not Sentinels here.
I actually just forgot.
Trend.
I haven't seen them play in so long.
That's the thing, we haven't seen them play. So I think Cloud9 Blue for me is I feel like they're going to be there. And then I think the second spot, as we talked about, XSET, 100 Thieves, Sentinels. I think there's a lot of teams. It's going to be a very exciting main event for VCT NA. So we went through it all. TSM, T1, surprises, pick Xander, cryocells, all of it. As the tournament begins, we're going to be giving you coverage all on upcomer.com and on Showstopper every week. So thank you, Yinsu, as always, and thank you, resident young person Danny, for bringing your 100 Thieves hype. We'll bring you on more as 100 Thieves hopefully does well in the VCT. And if they don't do well, we'll bring you on so we can watch you cry. For you fans out there, thank you for supporting us. And as always, we will see you next time on Showstopper. Okay.